Right, good morning everyone. This is going to be a video on how to create your own custom PCG level to asset action. Um, so in PCG you'll be aware that you can pack your meshes into a level instance and then right click on the level and go to asset actions and create a PCG asset from level. This came in like 5.4 or 5.5 as an updated version from what they used to call PCG level to settings. Um, and this is a great tool. Um, but the way it's been designed and implemented by the PCG team is that it focuses a lot on static meshes and doesn't give you things like actor references or class references if you need them. Um, so what I want to show you today is how to create your own entirely from Blueprint. You can extend it in either C++ or Blueprint, but I want to show you how to do it in Blueprint. And so what we need to do, I've got example files not there. I've got example files here, but I'm going to show you how to create them from scratch. Um, so we have a blueprint class and an editor blueprint utility. So the blueprint class is a exporter, PCG asset exporter. PCG level to asset is the one we want. PCG level to asset. And then we also need to create an asset action utility, which I think you go in the same place. Oh no, you create an editor utility blueprint if I recall. Well, let's find out. Asset action. That's what we want. Asset action utility. I'm going to call this PCG utility level to data asset. And I'm just going to put these in a separate folder so that we can just get them off the same screen as these working versions I've got. So we will go into, actually I'm going to rename this and just add the text exporter. Sorry, but it's all caps and messy. I just don't know why I did that really. So if we open this blueprint up, we can see that we have some overridable functions, and we need to override both the export world and the update asset function. Yeah, so we'll start with export world. Call to parent, right click call to parent. I'm not entirely sure if this is necessary, but I do it anyway. And then we'll essentially do our logic here. So it's going to do the original version first, and then we're going to do our logic here. And it is pretty complex, but luckily you can copy and paste a lot of it. So in the PCG plugins, they have the deprecated version of the level settings asset. So if we open plugins, no, not local plugins, engine plugins, and we scroll down to PCG or procedural content generation, framework, content, the content folder of the PCG plugin. And then we go into utilities, and this is their old level to PCG settings utility. So we'll open this. You can see they've got a big deprecated warning, but essentially what it's doing, you select a level asset in the browser, in the content browser, so just, you know, something like, select something like that, and then you'll run the process, so you'll have clicked on level PCG settings, although I think it's actually disabled it now, and it'll create a new asset if it's needed to. Well, it'll work out what the name of the asset is going to be, find out if it exists or not, then it'll either load it or create it, and it's setting up loads of information here for the PCG, setting up the PCG points, making sure there's nothing on this asset already. It's getting rid of the output pins, clearing all of these, and then it goes through 4 sort of major steps. It sets up the attributes. So if you've looked at a PCG settings asset before, or the current PCG data asset, you'll have seen a bunch of these attributes: the material, the mesh, the hierarchy depth, the actor, and the transform. It's going to get the level that you've selected and get all of the actors out of it and add it to an index map. It's going to set a root point, which is going to be based on the level, really. It goes into a different pin, does the root point on a PCG settings. And then the next thing it does is it starts creating the points. So again, it gets all of the actors that are on the level. And this is where a big limitation of the PCG data asset and workflow as it's set up is it only wants actors that have a static mesh component. They designed it for their use case. I believe it's, this sort of stuff is first, a lot of this PCG stuff is first used in some of the Lego games. And for whatever reason, when they're working with level assets, they were primarily focused on static meshes. So they're removing any actors that doesn't have a static mesh, and then it's going through a lot of logic to identify what the points are going to be in the PCG data asset and what the data is going to be on them. So it's doing things like, if the actor actually has a bunch of static mesh components, so it's got an instant static mesh component instead of just a static mesh component, it's going to make a point for each instant static mesh. So it's pretty complex and very smart. But what we're going to do is we're going to hijack it. Oh, and sorry, the last step is just saving the points and making the pins. Yeah. So we're going to steal a bunch of this logic for our use in our exporter. Yeah, and we can basically start from near here, really. So I start from here, copy all of this information. Oops. Create a matching function. Okay, we're going to have to fill that function in as well. Oops, let me move all the existing ones over to the start. Let me just find out where our return is. Our return node is going to go right down here. You can just say return. So one thing we have to do first is go in and create variables for all of this stuff. Most of them are actual variables. So anywhere where you see a set, create variable, or a get, we just need to keep going until we stop seeing these grey nodes. Level, create variable, create variable, create variable, current actor short, let's convert that, create a variable, actor ID, variable, point transform, let's go, static mesh, let's go. Are we there? Material? Not there yet. Zoom out and go back in. Output asset, yep. PCG output, yep. Output data asset. Point data root. Okay, that I believe we've done everything. Save. Okay, so there's a bit at the start that we do need to change, and what we need to do here is we need to make sure that we are setting the file path. And we also need to make sure that we are setting the file name. Is that right? Yeah, that is right. So we're going to get the package name and we're going to split it. We're going to get the path part and plug it into the name. Is that right? Sure. Now let me just check. Um, I'm missing a step somewhere, I think. Hmm. Where does it construct the point data? Oh well, right, okay. Let's see. Oh, I didn't create that variable. Didn't create that variable. Okay. We also, looking at this, we also need to construct a point data somewhere. Where is that happening? Find references. Oh, sorry, no. Find references. I don't know if it is anymore. Maybe they've done something different. Maybe that's changed in a separate engine version. Okay, let's get back into our level exporter. I think that's enough for now. So at the moment, we're just doing exactly what they're doing. But once we've got it working, I will then show you how to start making changes. So that is the... We're not creating the asset here, you'll have noticed, and that's because the exporter is expecting the asset to already exist. So whereas we still need to do all of this stuff on our end. Actually, that's where they're constructing the PCG points. I want to copy this because in my example, I'm creating the points here. Alright, I'm going to make a new macro. I'm going to call it construct PCG data. And I'm going to copy all of this. And I need to add an input. Actually, I should be able to add that. Yeah, okay, that worked. How do I give it an execution pin? That's how you do that. Let's just check it matches. No, okay, that goes into the outer. And that is going to have on it just an execution output pin. Great. I'll name that out. And the other one in. So then in my export world function, I can construct some PCG data. And the data I want to construct is based on that asset, I think. So I'm going to promote that to a variable. that. Going to do one more thing on this screen, which is make the level visible. So the level is what's used over here to get all the actors and build the actor index map. And this is going to be necessary later on. And the last step I needed to get right was getting the hierarchy depth. So I needed to copy this function. So let's try copying it. And can you not just paste the function? There we go. Okay. Let's delete that. Sure. Still got this one. What's that done? Okay. And it was being called somewhere over here probably. Let's find out. Find references. Okay, it's being called in this third block right towards the end. Yeah. Okay, great. That's still there. That's working. Is there any final bits we need to set up on this exporter? No, I think we're good. I think we're good. Although actually later on we will also override the update asset and fix that, but we'll start with just creating assets. Okay, so we've done this second half, but there was also the front end of the utility, which is creating the asset, and we need to do that in the other blueprint we created. So if we go back into our blueprints, PCG utility level to data asset. So this is the bit that actually sort of, you do this in the editor and it calls the export asset exporter to do the exporting. So we need to open this and we need to set the supported classes. So the supported classes are world, which is the sort of level itself. But then also we also want to be able to update PCG data assets. So those are the two supported classes. Is there any settings to be set up? No. Okay, so now what we are doing is we are going to create a new function. And we're going to call it PCG level to data asset with actor ref. Yeah. And in this one, we're going to take the first half of this information up until this file exists boolean branch, sorry. Going to paste this into our utility. Go through promoting to variables again. Great. Okay, now we have three different things that we might need to do here. The first thing we need to do when we are looping through our assets, so we can select multiple assets in the editor, by the way. We could select multiple levels and have this create an asset for all of them, or update an asset for all of them if we're making more changes. So if we get the level, now before we care about doing all of this stuff, we can also say, is the class of what we've selected equal to a PCG data asset? branch there, because that's going to make things a bit simpler if it is. Right. If it's false, we carry on. But if it's true, we're going to do some other stuff. Let me just make this look a bit nicer. Yeah. If we know it's a PCG data asset, then we don't need to get some of the other stuff. We can just construct an object from class, and we are going to construct our exporter. So PCG level to asset exporter. We're going to make one of these. We're going to set the world, which is a function on it. So we're going to do something called set world. And we are going to call something called update assets. So we don't need to create an asset, we just need to update assets. Now we need to make PCG asset stuff. Oh wait, actually I do need the file name already. So that won't work if I've not created the file name. This branch is in the wrong place. And this is the first time I'm noticing it. That's not very smart of me. Okay, so all I've done is I'm making the names figured out before. The name of what my asset is going to be called, not necessarily the name of the level, because that's already there. I'm just determining what the name of the PCG asset is going to be called. Yeah. So I'm going to get file name and folder path. And I don't need a save dialog box here. And then the other thing I need to do is I need to make my array of PCG assets. Make array. I'm going to get the level, and since we know it is a PCG asset, we can just say asset data, which just sort of creates the data from the U object and cracks on. That is almost done, but as you can see, we've got our set world missing, and we also need to set a variable. So here I want to set the variable of level. No, that's not what I wanted. That's not what it looks like. I want to get this object, this one that we've made visible, and I want to set that. Like that. That's what it looks like. And I'm gonna get our level that we've selected and plug that in there. And then for this get world, this is a funny one because we sort of just need to get the current world, but I don't think that's easy. So a trick I use, which seems to work fine, is I get the layer subsystem and then I get world from that. And then I'll whack that in there. And that is fine. So if we've selected a PCG data asset in the content browser and right clicked and selected our asset action to update, then this section block of code would run. But if it's not a PCG data asset, then it's going to be a level. And then if it's a level, first thing we need to check is, have we created a PCG data asset? If we have created a PCG data asset, then we can do a lot of this stuff again. But all we then need to do, let's do a lot of that again. But we don't need to create this asset data. What we can do is we can just do find asset data and take our file path Oops, I didn't copy and paste something up there. Missed out the file name apparently. And with that asset data, we can plug that into our make array. So update asset, great. And then the final scenario is where we don't have a PCG data asset existing. So in that scenario, we call something called create asset, and it's in the PCG sort of IO stuff. So for that, we pass it our exporter information. I think I'm just learning that this stuff is actually pointless if I've already got a PCG data asset, because the asset already knows what exporter it's using. Okay. Anyway, we're going to do something very similar here. We are going to construct an exporter, set the world, set the level. So we need to do both of these things again. And then we plug in the exporter after we've set the data on it. And then we're just creating the asset again, and that's the parameters. Oops. And that is the front end done. So we've got a system that is going to create an asset or update an existing asset, and we've also specified what the function for updating it is going to be. So the moment of truth, is it working? Let me find a map. So right click, and the default version, the PCG version, is this: create PCG assets from levels. But we've created a scripted asset action, and we've created one called PCG level to data asset with active reference. This one here is my example. So if I click this now, do I crash and start recording the video again? No. Great. It's created a PCG data asset. Let's quickly confirm that it's got some of the information we're expecting. So open up a PCG and let's drag in our third person map. Let's inspect with A, and we have root point, and we also have points. Now remember, we're just getting a normal PCG data asset here, so what we've got here is anything with a mesh. So it's giving us all of our cubes, because this is actually this map, so it's giving us all of this data. And actually, let's try static mesh spawner, spawning by attribute. Where's this one again? By attribute, and we can just say mesh. I actually need to make it local, I think. Let's create point. Let's create it locally. Let's copy points. Data asset is my source, and the point is my target. Static mesh spawner. Okay, great. So now, what's going on over there? Now my PCG is spawning these meshes. Oh, and actually it's probably spawning another sky sphere, which is why stuff looks weird. Maybe? I have no idea. So we've created a PCG asset exporter, and we've created an asset action. They both work, but they're doing the... Sorry, this is the asset action. Is it? No, that's the exporter. Have I named these the wrong way around? No, I haven't. That's creating the asset, and that's determining what happens with all of the points. So this is where we want to start making changes if we want to store things like the actor reference. So I will give a quick kind of crap demonstration of that, and it's up to you guys to expand on it. Export world. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go right down here, and I'm going to create soft object path attribute. I'm going to plug in my PCG metadata points. So this same stuff up here, actually I should have just copy and pasted that. I'm going to plug that in. I'm going to name the attribute actor ref. And I need to set a default value. Is that what I want to do? Sure. Get class. Get soft class. No. Get object. Does that work? Sure. Maybe getting a soft object actor reference is a bad idea. Maybe what I want is the class. Yeah, let's do the class instead. Sorry. Create soft class path attribute. Metadata points. Actor class. Get class. Get soft class path. Now, so that's created an attribute on the points, but we need to populate it with the correct data. So we go down to this create points section, and we need to remember that this is only creating points where a component has a static mesh. That's not necessarily going to be what we want. But for now, I'm going to leave it that way. You can also sort of, if false, create another PCG point and start setting some of the attributes on it. But I'm going to leave it as it is. I'm going to skip right to the end. And where we've been setting some of these attributes, I'm just going to tack on to the end. Do I want to do it? I want to do it before this loop. I'm just going to tack on a set soft class attribute, class path attribute. I'm going to get my metadata points. I am going to get my point, which is coming down through this information. This is the same stuff going into there. Going to use the same attribute name as above, and then what I'm going to do is we are working on a current actor. So where do we? That was set all the way back at the start of this loop, current actor. So I'm going to get that variable. Current actor. And just like we did when we were setting up the default, we're going to get class, get soft class path, and that, in theory, is all going to work. So, scripted asset action with actor reference. Didn't crash. Don't know if anything was successful. Let's open our PCG up. Right, cutting that, just changing it up because I went wrong for about 15 minutes and had to come back to it. There's a couple of changes we need to make. So in your exporter, at the very bottom, there is a section of code here. Let me see if we can see it on the standard PCG. Where is the original PCG one? Which I have closed. Content, utilities, level to PCG, this red one. Okay, so down here, we put our return node here, but actually we need to delete all of this right until this branch. And then from this data collection output node, sorry, this here, delete up to that, and then we need to get our asset, drag it out, and then you need to do set data on your asset, plug that in, That fixes the export world. Then the other thing you're going to want to do at this point is override update asset and go into update asset, copy and paste the whole thing from export world, paste it in, but then right at the start looks slightly different. So the start, instead of calling to the super and then setting the asset, in the update asset version, you only have the asset come through, you plug that in, and then you set the path names. Those two changes, then you can go back to your PCG asset, and you should have actor class. If you don't, restart your engine, delete your old PCG Data Asset. So let me get there. Don't delete that. Delete that if you've got one. And what I would also suggest is go into your utility, your data asset, and where you're setting the file name here, set something that makes it unique to the standard PCG stuff. Set PCGA, something like that, so that when you go and create an asset with your scripted asset action with actor, it'll create a different file to the same stuff that this would be creating. Because otherwise you might end up overwriting it. So yeah, with that you can go into the graph, drag it in, go to your points, and you'll have your actor class. Now from here you're sort of on your own. You know, everybody wants something different from this PCG data asset, but I've seen people requesting quite a lot that they want to know what kind of actor it is. So that's what I've done here. I've got the class for you so that you can, you know, just say spawn actor of class here at this location, because you've got it on the point, you've got the location, you've got the relative transform, so you can just spawn an actor. You could go back in and cut out loads of the logic relating to static mesh components and instant static mesh components, because otherwise you'll end up with loads of actors. You'll end up with an actor for each instant static mesh, which you probably don't want if you're going to start spawning by the actor. And there's obviously loads of other stuff you can do. You will want to be doing lots of things like, well, for instance, if you did go down the route of not caring whether a target has a static mesh component on it, so you remove this branch and you start spawning points for all the actors in your scene, then you do start getting like you'd get an entry for the world data layers, you'd get an entry for the PCG world data actor, you'd get an entry for the lighting. So you'd need to, you know, create a way to filter that stuff out by updating this blueprint. But yeah, this video was just to show you how to go and set that up from scratch and get it working. Right, I got sidetracked again, so I'm just cutting in just to say bye really. I'll investigate, make sure the updating assets and updating levels is working correctly, and maybe do a follow-on video if further changes need to be made. But you can create an asset, so I'm just going to leave it there. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.